So, internet, welcome. This class is pretty bare bones, mostly because all I really do is just give you what I want, and y'all give me what I want. That's really how it works. So, here, give me a sec. We'll get into it. I'll show you what I mean by all that, and you'll know. That'll understand. You'll understand that a little bit better in a sec. So, right, spring 2020 started Monday the 13th. You guys know that's 15th now, Wednesday. That's when we meet. But I did have this question earlier in the week. Yes, it will open on Monday. And yes, it's still due on Sunday. The reason why is in the lecture, I'm really not going to be telling you how to do these things. I'm going to show you where to go to get the information that you need to complete the project. That's pretty much how it works. If you end up in a situation at work where someone's like, hey, we need to get into Docker because it's going to save us $100,000 a year. Like, I'm not saying that they won't, just that odds are, at least when you're very first implementing this stuff, you may not get a chance to go take a class about Docker and learn everything that there is to know about Docker and then implement Docker at work, right, over a span of a year. What's that? Well, that's true. And you're going to get booted out to DigitalOcean every now and then for some projects. But yeah, I mean, that's the basic idea. When someone tells you to go research something, they typically are not handing you an academic book about that thing. You're meant to just go do some research on it, figure out what it is. Because a lot of times, this stuff is made by programmers that, and it's so new and complex that a book's not going to do it for you. So anyway, long story short, that's the idea. When there are announcements I need to let you guys know about, right? Like on Wednesday, I'm not going to be here. I'm not going to be here this day. Don't be here. Don't come in, whatever. News forum, y'all know this. It will email you, so you don't have to check this thing. Just watch your email. WebEx, if you're away and you want to hear my 15-minute ramble about whatever it is we're doing this week, click on that button, tune in. The book, maybe you've noticed, that is the book. It's not really the book, but it should be your starting point for just about everything, right? If you are trying to implement DHCP on Linux and you're having issues with it, the first thing you should do is go find the manual for DHCP on Linux. Pretty much, yeah. So that will at least get you started. It'll answer those basic questions like, how do I set the subnet? How do I set the range of IP addresses that the DHCP server is going to give out? It'll answer those basic questions. And when you have that basic platform to stand on, then we can have a conversation about, oh, well, it's probably just a semicolon, or you have it backwards, or you have the subnet set wrong, or something like that, right? When you know the basics and I have something to work from, like the mistakes that you have made, then we can come together and figure out what the solution is. But if you're going to come up to me and just say, hey, how do you do a DHCP on Linux? I'm going to provide you with resources to answer those questions in the first place so that we can have a conversation about how to finesse it to work instead of building it from the ground up. So anyway, that should be your starting point. Ask questions on the internet first, because I guarantee you someone's already done it a million times. And then we can figure out why you're 95% of the way there, but you just can't make it work. We can fix that. So syllabus, I don't know why. I can't. I guess I could jump through some hoops and make it work, I guess. But anyway, for the syllabus, if you want to see it, I'll show it to you. But I'm just linking you to the lookup site. Just look up my name. And it's going to be a little further down. This one, 2354, 46Y1. There's your syllabus. As you can see, that none of this stuff up here has changed. It's the same from every semester. And that's it. These are all the things that we do. We just do one lab per week. Yes, sir?
On your very first assignment for the lab is download Windows 10 ISO. Do we still have our Windows 10 ISO from the other ones? Can we just use that?
As long as it is 1809 or newer.
Okay.
Every older version of Windows is end of life.
Okay.
So, yeah. You typically won't see that in production. So anyway, that's it. So we got 15 labs. Your midterm project is just another lab. So yeah, and your final project is just another lab. So they
Labs that build on each other, right?
yes, they are. Yep.
Be
We-
very cautious about.
Yes. The idea with this is if you need to take a little extra time on a specific project because you're running into issues and we need to work that out, that's okay. The thing, though, is you just can't skip them. If you skip them, your network will not work.
But the point is going to leak.
Yeah. The VMs that you create in this class, you will carry to the very end of this class. So do not delete them. And if you do delete them, make sure you take copies before you do that. Yes. Actually, just do snapshots and backups anyway.
After every assignment.
Yeah, actually, that is a really good...
You need to have that printed on your forehead.
That is a really good time to do that. So at the end of every project, when you're submitting me homework, go and take snapshots on all the VMs that you touched. That way, if you blow it up the next lab, you can just roll back and yeah, exactly. When you blow it up, you'll be able to roll it back. That's super important. And I totally forgot to share the screen, so let me share the screen. We're not looking at anything important though, so there you go. Just that. Those are the labs that are coming up. So, anyhow, join the Slack channel. This way, I guarantee you, more than one of you are going to run into the same issue. And it's always going to be a semicolon. It's always a semicolon. But you're going to run into the same issue, and if somebody else has run into that more recently than I have, they might have, they'll have the ability to answer your question faster than I will. It is always DNS, but the reason that it's DNS is because you forgot a semicolon. I promise, Bind 9 is not easy. It's very unwieldy and there's a lot to it. What we're doing is not that bad, but Bind is already a behemoth, so. All right. So each lab is going to have something similar to this. It's going to give you some basics, like what the types of VMs that you need to make your lab work. And these early labs will have some basic information like use at least the minimum system requirements for Windows. So I'm not necessarily dictating. I've done that enough in first and second semester to dictate how big the disk is, how much RAM you want to give it, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I'm leaving it to you to... Nope. You know why? Because in the textbook for this class, you can find out what the minimum system requirements for Windows 10 are.
Google?
Yeah. Look at that. And where there are times where I want to make a recommendation, I will do that. But again, I'm not going to grade you. If you don't put 2 virtual CPUs in your VM for this, I'm not going to count off for that. I don't care. I am saying that would be a really, really good choice. And if you want to do more than that, that would even be better. But, assign what you have. Don't oversubscribe your the hardware. But 2 is a good, nice starting point. If that's too many, scale it back. If it's not enough, add more. And then pfSense. You have already done pfSense. We set up pfSense to use in the security class the last few weeks of the class. To get some firewall stuff working. We played with Sophos, so you kind of have a good idea of where firewall is in the network and the basics of you need 2 network cards, things like that, right? We're going to take that one step further. We did this in the security class a little bit, but we're going to actually really utilize it in this class. So in pfSense, RAM disk, again, I need you to have at least this. So I am going to pay attention to this one. You're going to need 3 network interfaces. This is really what I'm grading. I'm really grading whether or not you have the infrastructure in place. If you've got 2 gigs of RAM or half a gig of RAM, whatever, fine. What I'm really looking for is this. So y'all know, because you've been through Cisco a bajillion times, a bajillion different Cisco classes, that most routers have not just 2 network interfaces, right? Not one for the internet, one for the internal LAN. They have more than that. They've got cards that you can add to give you 2 more interfaces, or switches. You can actually add switches to a router as well. You can do a lot of fun stuff. So we're doing that here. So I need you to have 3 network interfaces. 1 as WAN to get the internet. Bridged is best because it will reduce latency and make your VMs go a little bit faster to the internet. However, if you have issues getting internet using bridged, flip it to NAT. NAT will work, but it adds an additional routing hop, which does add a little bit of latency to things. So it'll slow things down just a little bit. So I'm not too terribly worried about it. So long as you have WAN set to bridged or NAT, that's good enough for me.
On NAT, though, you're more secure, aren't you?
Not sort of, I guess. I mean, you can make that argument, yes. But if you're bridging, you're already behind a NAT router because you're pulling it from your access point at home or you're pulling it from here or something like that. There already is a NAT router out there. So double natting doesn't add anything that you don't already have. Then you're going to create 2 additional network interfaces on this machine. I'm going to refer to them as LAN 1 and LAN 2. And pfSense will refer to them as LAN. LAN 1 will end up being LAN, the first network card that you add. And the second network card that you add will be opt1. pfSense will name it opt1. You can go change it later, but by default, it comes up as opt1. So be aware of that when you're setting all this up. There's a link to the pfSense download. Go get that, 64-bit. Then show me how you set up pfSense. Again, I'm really just looking at the network stuff, so make sure that's at least that is in the picture. That's what I'm after here. I want to make sure you've got 1 interface, internet-facing, and then 2 interfaces that are set to internal network. You do not necessarily have to name them exactly this, right? Windows, Linux. But I tend to like things that are very self-descriptive, right? If the Windows network is named Windows, then you know and I know that only Windows machines should be on that network, right? Unless you got a good reason to swap them out, and we'll run into that kind of stuff later on. But yeah, be descriptive in how you're setting things up. It will save you a lot of heartache later on. And write stuff down, please. Not for me, but for you. But then when you ask me a really complex question about IP addresses and stuff like that, the 3 seconds that you took to tell me all the IP addresses and host names of all the devices, I'm not remembering that like at all. So if you have it written down, it helps a lot. Helps me visualize what you're going through so that I can help you better. So if you write it down, it helps you and it helps me help you. All right. So install pfSense with the whole disk. I'm not really too worried about that. Create a new network with a CIDR mask of /24. When you log into pfSense, as we've done before, I just wrote that down for your benefit, admin pfSense. It should be available. It should not be broken by default. But if for some reason you'll use option 2, when you get, so when pfSense boots up, you can see what IP is, and you get that whole list of options. Option 2 will help you walk through turning DHCP on, right? You set the DHCP, or you set the IP address, answer a couple questions about subnet and VLANs, and then it asks you, do you want to turn DHCP on? Just yes on that question. It'll take care of it. And then the way that pfSense asks for it, it asks for the first IP address and the last IP address of the range, right? Let me see. And I'm asking you to reserve the first 5 IP addresses. So when I say reserve, this is a concept out of the Windows playbook. Windows, you can go in and set up a set of IP addresses that are just off limits, and then you can go, those IP addresses can exist in a range, and then Windows will know not to deal with them. In my opinion, it's too much work. Just make the range of IP addresses not include the IP addresses you don't want to use, right? So reserve the first 5 IP addresses. You do not have to physically go do this. Just do not assign them to anything. pfSense is going to be exempt from this rule. Typically, routers are always .1. They don't have to be. They can be totally something else. It does not matter to me overall. But as far as ease of use goes, as far as what, like if you bring me a set of 4 VMs and you're asking questions, my mind will ultimately go to .1 as your router. And then, if I'm thinking that and you're not that, then remind me of that, because that's just where my mind's going to go. Anyway, so reserve the first 5 IP addresses. So long story short, just don't assign them to anything. Or don't put them in the DHCP range. Sorry, don't put them in the DHCP range. That's what I'm after. We're going to assign some of those IP addresses out later on. So log into pfSense to the web interface, and you'll be able to go in to pfSense and change it. So you'll see, like, when you hover over interfaces, it's going to pop down. It's going to say WAN, LAN, opt1. What I want you to do is, at least for LAN and opt1, go to LAN, change it to whatever its name is. That way, your internal network on VirtualBox says Windows. Your pfSense interface is named Windows. And when you boot up pfSense and look at that black and white text screen, it's going to say Windows off to the side. That way, it's just all consistent for all the way down the line. It's going to say Windows. So you know Windows stuff goes on that network. And same for, go ahead. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So if I'm just taking it at a glance or whatever, I know what's what. I know this one is Windows. So the third interface, so opt1, go in and set that to Linux. Now, again, if you call it something else, just make it consistent. Consistent all the way down. And then set the IP configuration type to static. So when you enable that third adapter, it is not going to be configured by default. It's not going to get an IP address. It's not going to have anything on it. So you have to go and manually do it, and that's what these instructions are for. So set the IPv4 configuration type. You'll see that off to the side. Set that to static, and then you go assign it, right? Assign it an IP address. Assign it a subnet mask. If you want DHCP, and you do, go to Services DHCP Server, and then choose the Linux interface, and then go and set that up. If you need pointers on how that is set up, go to the Windows tab. It's already set up by default, so you can just use that as a springboard, kind of a starting point to configure the Linux stuff. What do I check? What do I uncheck? What do I fill in? Check out Windows. It'll have all those questions answered for you, and use that to set up Linux. Then in the firewall. So you remember, like, the last 3 weeks of the security class, we were messing around with the firewall. It all comes to a head right here. You have to take all those skills and roll it into one. So in firewall rules in pfSense. But the cool thing is that you can, for lack of a better word, copy and paste. But it's like you click on the copy thing, and it's like, where do you want me to copy this to? Just copy it over to the Linux tab. And from there, you just make a tweak or two, right? Because it's obviously not the Windows LAN or Windows Net anymore. You'll swap that to like LinNet, Linux Net. Yeah. But, I mean, making mistakes like that is actually really good because you learn how a firewall doesn't work. And in that way, you kind of whittle out, well, don't do it that way. You do it the opposite way. And it's just a better understanding of how a firewall works. I'll take someone that has made 7 mistakes over anybody that's never made a mistake before. Any day. Any day. Yeah. But, I mean, yeah, if you think about it, though, like, that guy knows 7 ways not to do it.
Well, I don't know why, but the actual rules, like going through and setting up PS6, because I've done it a bunch of times. I mean, it's no problem. But when you actually go and apply those rules,
yeah.
I get turned around every fucking time.
Yeah. So a lot of it can translate to English, but you got to know a little bit about it in the first place. So if you're having those troubles or whatever, we'll work through it. I'll help you out. And there's nothing in this setup or in any of these labs that I am just going to flat out tell you no on.
I mean, it sounds like this whole course is remember all the software you played with before?
Yes.
Now play with it and apply it now.
Uh-huh.
And you're probably going to run into troubles.
Yep.
All right, in the future.
Yep, because there's nothing in here. There's nothing in this class. If you look at that syllabus, there's nothing in this class that's actually new. It's just training wheels are off now.
Yeah.
So, go set it up for real now.
All a lot. I scrape.
Yep. Every kid's got a skinned knee because they fell off their bike. Yep. It always happens. So what you really want to do is in this section, firewall rules, go to Windows tab, and then you can just copy the rules from Windows and then copy them over to Linux and then just tweak them a little bit. And because without this, there are no rules in a firewall. In the Linux firewall, there are no rules. And think of ACLs in Cisco. Think of how we configured pfSense last time. If there are no rules in a firewall, what happens to any given packet?
Nothing.
The implicit deny kicks in and says, nope. So if you don't have any allow rules at all, everything is denied. So this is not an optional step at all.
I feel like I'm doing Linux a disservice by going over and looking at Windows.
Nah, I don't think you are, because you're going to need to know both. Windows has its place and Linux has its place. And if you know both, you're going to be really good. Because odds are, when you walk into a job, the kind of laptop they're going to send you or give you probably has Windows on it. So you'll be right at home. You may not like it, but you'll know where things are. And then, when you actually want to get work done, you SSH into a Linux machine. You'll know how that works too. But it's good to know both. So anyway, test both networks. So I said, Windows stuff goes on Windows, Linux stuff goes on Linux. You can break that rule here. Because what I want you to do, I didn't tell you to install any version of Linux yet. We're not to that part yet. So in this lab, what I'd like you to do is, obviously your Windows 10 box is going to be connected up to Windows. That should probably already work for you because pfSense set up most of that. And just test the internet. Make sure it works. If it works, you're golden. You don't really need to do much more on the Windows side. But then, take that Windows VM and in the internal network part of the networking, swap it over to the Linux side, right? And that would mirror, say you've got a router, a switch hanging off one interface and a switch hanging off another interface. That's what you're doing. You're plugging it into your Windows machine, and then when you flip it over on internal network in VirtualBox, you're unplugging it from that physical switch, plugging it into the other physical switch, and then you're testing that. You're testing that route out. And if the firewall agrees, if the DHCP range agrees, if routing is working, you'll get internet.
No.
If you do not,
There's a trick here.
those are the three things you got to focus on. And if you focus on them and get them right, it'll work.
Really?
But if you misstep somewhere, we'll need to work our way backwards and troubleshoot and figure out where that is. But that thing, the troubleshooting word, that's the point of this class. Anybody, I think, can do a little bit of Googling and install Bind9 or DHCP services on Linux or just install Active Directory on Windows or whatever and muddle their way through and not know anything about what they're doing, and it'll still work at the end. What ends up happening in this class is that you'll set up DHCP and it'll be fantastic and it'll work. But the next week that you encounter DNS, you start adding that service and configuring that service, and then you realize DNS and DHCP they intermingle. You've got to configure one right to have the other one right. So you start configuring DNS and you run into an issue and you don't know what it is. But it turns out it was DHCP. You really see in this class how these things fit together, right? I mean, we've been working on puzzle pieces in isolation. When you set up DHCP in the Windows, in the NDS class, it's just go through these steps. Next. Type these things in. Right. That's in isolation. Now those walls are broken down. Everything has to work together now. So I'm really more interested in your journey than you submitting that thing. If I can tell that things are clicking as we're going through these labs, that's more important to me than whether or not you can give me some whole novel story about how all these things work together. I'm more worried about whether or not you understand why DHCP broke when you did this to DNS. That's more important to me, because those are the questions that you have later on when, it's nice for DHCP to break here because you're only worried about 2 VMs. But if DHCP breaks at the office and now 50 people can't get on the internet, that's what I'm trying to hone for you, to be able to think about that abstractly so that you can look at that server and say, okay, I don't know what the problem is, but at least I know where to start. Let's start looking at the basics. Is the gateway router? Well, yeah. Is it on? Yes. But the green light at the front of the server should tell you that. And then you can start working your way there. Can I ping it? Is the gateway set right? Is the DNS set right? Is this here? Is that there, right? And you start working down that thing. But, without a little bit of experience, it's really hard to go through those steps. And, yeah. So I know I'm saying it a lot, but it truly is the point of this class. Being able to troubleshoot it. That is the whole point. Might look and sound easy.
No, it's not.
But you will. I don't care how smart you are. I don't care how good a Googler you are. You will run into an issue. And if you can figure it out yourself, great. But if you can't, do not hesitate to come ask me a question. And I will help you answer those.
How do you download?
How do you download it? Just click it.
Hold on.
Oh, okay. I was gonna say you click the download button. All right. So, about what I have said so far. If you're having troubles with your lab, we'll take care of those later. But right after this. But if you have any questions about any of the class itself, how to get a hold of me, this particular, the instructions in the lab, any questions like that? So, all right. And the way that this class is going to work, and this is totally the reason why it is going to be okay that we don't talk until Wednesday. On Monday, that lab will open up. Read it over. The instructions that I have on there, that's all I'm going to tell you on Wednesday. I'm not going to go on some long tangent. This is probably going to be the longest video that I have the entire semester. So
we don't get your like.
No, you will.
Hat stuff.
But you can. I mean, but that's part of that conversation, right? Like, I mean, the video is just me yakking at you, but if you yak back, then all right then. So then you will. Then you will get those tangents. And you know, when security stuff happens, I guarantee you I'll come in here with a tinfoil hat on trying to tell you guys how not to buy a Ring doorbell, right? You know? I'll do those whole conversations too. So no. I mean, well, you can, but
What the Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, security risk?
well, Amazon doesn't really care too much about the authentication on those things, so they'll let someone from, I don't know, like what?
India?
Yeah, from India, just like try usernames and passwords on your account like all day, every day, and they'll never do anything about it. Like there's no fail to ban to tell it to like after 3 times we're gonna stop you for an hour and then you can try again. Like there's none of that. And then so when someone gets into that account, Amazon doesn't even email and say, hey, someone logged into your account from Pakistan. Like I would like to know that I'm not in Pakistan and I don't use a VPN that is in Pakistan. So what's that?
Is that why you did yours on a Pi?
Is that why I did mine on what? Oh, on a Pi. Yeah. It's the whole reason. It's the whole reason. If that thing gets hacked, it is my fault, and I'm okay with that. But if it gets hacked and it's Amazon fault, like I'm not okay with that. Like, yeah. So, right. At least they could do is email you, tell you that someone logged in from Pakistan. Like, let me know. That would be great. They don't do that. It doesn't yet. Because I log into the thing. Like, there is no authentication to get into the Pi, but there's authentication to get into my network. So I'm going to fix that, but right now, yeah. We're still in beta phase. Right. All right. Well, that's it. That's your task for the week. Run through those things. Stick around. Just because we meet on Wednesday doesn't mean you guys can't come in on Monday and Tuesday and ask me questions, and it doesn't mean that you can't come in on Thursday and Friday and ask me questions. I'm here 8 to 5 every day, and as long as I'm not yakking at a different group of people, then you know, there's an upper limit, but as long as I'm not in class with somebody else, with another group of people or something like that, feel free. Just come up to the office. It's a pretty big limit. Like the limit is high. You'll know when you reach it, but if you're being reasonable, no, there is not a limit. All right. So get used to the new Moodle. Sorry about that. And these videos should be posted, 24 hours ish after I do them. But like I said, there's not going to be a whole lot of point in rewatching those. But even if you have to, they should only be 10, 15 minutes. So it'd be pretty quick to get through them. All right. That's it.